So, thank you, Abigail. Come on.
Good morning, dear friends. Marcel was supposed to be here this morning, but he asked me to say hello to you guys. He's in California. So here we are, and we're going to share our study with you guys. There is Yoke. And our goal for today is to invite all of us to reflect our own need and the benefits of Jesus' guidance. So with the beautiful opening that we had is already an invitation about our need of being humble. Just when we are humble, we can look at our heart. You felt that right away? Okay. So, what is yoke? It's a wooden cross piece that is fastened over the necks of two animals and attached to the cloth or cart. So in reality, it's a piece of equipment that allowed the animals to work together in a common task. And when we talk about the yoke of Jesus, that's exactly what it is. Jesus invites us to get together, aligned in a common task. And the task is for us to learn how to love each other, love ourselves and love one another, and how to evolve, how to progress in life. That's the common task we have with Jesus. He's willing to be here as our guide to help us. So, starting the talk, I'm going to ask you guys to reflect a little bit. Just pay attention what you did this morning so far. What you did yesterday. What you did this past week. And I invite you to reflect how much you got Jesus involved on that. How much Jesus is involved in your affairs. That's the question. Don't need to answer now. But just by meditating and reflecting those questions, we are going to discover the benefit to learn about Jesus' lesson and most importantly, learning to apply in our lives. So everything that Jesus taught us, every lesson he brought us, every word, even though sometimes it's a parable that we do not understand all that well, that's so important that we learn to understand the lessons of our Master. Because many of us say, Jesus is our guide and our Master. But what exactly that means? How much you understand of his lessons so he can truly guide you through your everyday life. Because that's the point. Many times we know intellectually the lessons, but we don't get it in our heart. And our talk is for us to embrace all that, and we have more chance to apply Jesus' lesson in our life. So David, could you please read this for us?
Come unto me, all you who suffer and are overburdened, and I will comfort you. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me that I am gentle and humble of heart, and you will find rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light.
Thank you. How many times you feel burned and you truly connect with Jesus and ask the help? How many times we got lost in our stress and feeling overwhelmed and we just forget to ask for help? How many times? Am I alone here or happen to you too? Sometimes when in the middle of the turmoils, we forget that the yoke, Jesus' yoke is easy and soft and make the burden to be lived. So that's what we're going to talk about it. Sandra, could you read? I'm asking help because the brand new glass is progressive. So I don't want to be dizzy yet. So I ask all your help and understanding. A greatest way to ask help.
Sure.
Thank you.
Through this direct teaching, Jesus helps us see the importance of his gospel as the safe route to the achievement of true happiness. Clarified by Emmanuel, in facing the truth, we can present ourselves with a bodiless baggage of debts from a dark past. However, from the instant we yield to the Lord's will by sincerely accepting the obligation of our own regeneration, we are heading to a different spiritual realm where the yoke is easy and the burden is light.
Yeah, so it is a fact. I have a good news. We are all in the same path. We all have lots of baggage. We all get burned. We all get overwhelmed by facing our troubles. Because we have to have a lot of courage to realize that we have baggage. We have vices. We have a lot of things to learn. And when we sincerely accepting the obligation of our own regeneration, that's when we start heading to a different spiritual realm, that we can connect with Jesus and experience how easy is his yoke and how the burden can be light. Until then, it's heavy. So that's the first hint. We need to be sincerely accepting the obligation of our own regeneration. Because many times we ask Jesus' help to take away the consequence of our actions. Is that going to happen? No, because we are the sum of ourselves. But we can ask his help to alleviate when we take responsibility for our own regeneration. Veronica, you've been chosen now.
Christ said, "Blessed are the afflicted, for they shall be consoled." And how can anyone feel fortunate if they do not know why they suffer? Spiritism shows the cause of suffering and explains the object behind suffering by showing it as a salutary process which produces a cure and also as a means of purification.
So this is the first step for us to understand. Jesus is with us to help us, and our doctrine, Spiritism, comes to clarify his words. And Spiritism helps us to understand the cause of suffering. So we understand that many times the pain that is showing up in our life is an information that we are off track. It's the same thing when we are cooking and we put our hands in the oven. Oops, I should not be doing that. Right? And many times our suffering is an information. Oops, I should not be doing that. But many times we feel a lot of pain and we ask God, with Jesus, please remove this pain. But I keep my hands in the burner. So Spiritism comes to educate us the cause of our affliction. And when we sincerely start taking the responsibility for our own regeneration, we understand when the pain shows up, rather physical or emotional, it's an information that something is off and we need to realign. And that's when Jesus comes to help us. Okay, John, it's your turn. Thank you.
All types of sufferings, such as misery, disappointment, physical pain, loss of loved ones, find consolation in faith in the future, and in the trust in trust in God's justice, which Christ came to teach humankind. On the other hand, upon those who expect nothing after this life, or who simply doubt, afflictions bear down with all their weight, and no hope comes to soften their bitterness.
Okay.
This is what led Jesus to say, "Come unto me, you who are weary, and I will give comfort you."
So, how many times we experience afflictions and we start doubting God's justice? Why me? Why does this happen to me? How many times we don't have the understanding that we are immortal beings? How much suffering there is when we do not understand in Jesus' lesson or God's justice. So all these studies the gospel brings to us is helping us to understand so we can assess all the strength, the help, the support that we have. But it is imperative that we learn that the misery, the disappointment, the loss of loved ones, there is a reason for that. Because when we feel pain, when we have an affliction, there is no wrong address. It is exactly what is supposed to happen to us as a consequence of our choices, intentions, and actions. So Spiritism comes to clarify Jesus' lessons, Jesus' words, and help us connect with our Father, most importantly, to understand His justice. So it's a combination of all that give us comfort and benefit from the easy yoke of Jesus. Nevertheless, Jesus places one condition on the assistance and happiness He promised to the afflicted. That condition is found in the law He teaches. His yoke is an observance of that law. But this yoke is easy and the law is gentle, simply because He imposes love and charity as a duty. So, combine all the lessons and the Spiritism teaches us. There are laws that we need to follow. When we align ourselves with the laws, we are going to feel that in our heart there is more chance for us to manifest love. And we understand that responsibility is the charity that we can do. Because every time I take responsibility for my pain, it's an act of charity for my brothers. Because I might think that Angela did something to me and I'm in great pain because of her action. How terrible is that? But when I take responsibility for my feelings, exactly what Carla was saying in the opening, when I take responsibility for my feelings, I have more chance to look at a person that is bringing some opportunity for me to know myself a little better as my brother. And that is our duty, our responsibility. And we'll talk a little bit some more. Okay? Who is my next volunteer? Thank you.
The yoke to which Jesus relates is precisely His doctrine, the knowledge and the practice of the rules of well-being, set forth in the Sermon of the Mountain, and the Spiritist Revelation is the practice of love, duties of charity, the awareness of principles of eternal law, and their possible observance spread on the heights of Sinai.
So, summing up, how important it is for us to learn it, to practice of the love, the duties of the charity, and the awareness of the principles of the eternal laws. So if I ask you, are you aware of the eternal laws? Do you know all the laws? Who have studied Spirit's book? Okay, so we have more chance, right? Because they are all there in detail we learn in our class. So when we do not study and learn the laws, it is harder, right, to put in practice. So that's what's so important for us to study the doctrine, study the laws, so we know how to put that in place and help us to be aligned with the law. And that's all what Jesus said in the Sermon of the Mountain. When we look in the sermon, that is all there, all the laws. So under Jesus' protection and guidance, we acquire moral strength that free us from old habits that keep us tied to the ground of imperfections. In this regard, the Spiritist orientation provides us with the key to the understanding of the message of Christ necessary to our own true happiness. So, it is imperative that we learn the words that Jesus was talking about. Learning His message, learning what He brought to us. He was the medium of our Father and came to remind us that we are child of God and we are learning to act with love. And all that, His lesson, free us from the old habits that we had that keep us tied in our imperfections. So it's important to emphasize that if Christ speaks of His yoke, it is because they are others, such as lower passions, previously noted. Under these conditions, the person runs the risk of being indifferent to the good, preferring to stay in an insolent life, and then subjugate of the swings of selfishness that nourish existence. So, as we go through talking today, we are going to learn that there are many yokes that we are under. And that's an invitation for us to look at. And we'll talk a little bit more of that. But knowing that our low tendencies, our imperfection, invite us to go elsewhere rather than to be aligned with Jesus. So it is important that we know this tenderness expression, "come to me," indicates the possibility of release from the burden of trials. It is a sincere appeal that resembles outstretched hands, fraternal embrace, on weeping away tears, to offer a friend's shoulder, also a manifestation of relief, comfort, and protection. When we don't have all that support, that's why we don't know sometimes how to act. We get imprisoned in our trials and we get burned down. So those are the tender expression, "come to me," means to us, that help us to remind we don't need to feel burdened down. Sometimes we are stressed, we are confused, we experience affliction, and the tendency is to separate ourselves from others. And when we do that, many times we separate ourselves from Jesus, from God. Because when we shut down, because we know God sometimes speaks to us through a friend. When we shut ourselves down and get feeling the burn, we are not absorbing all this tenderness that Jesus offered to us. And because we don't know how to reach out like that, sometimes that's why we feel so lost. We feel overloaded. We don't know how to alleviate it. So let's see how that goes. "Coming to me, all who suffer and are burned." The expression "come to me" is saturated of loving vibrations, because Jesus knew us that well, and he knows we bring a lot of baggage. He knows that sometimes the weight that we carry on our shoulder is really big. Who understands what I'm talking about? Have you felt like that? We all did, right? We all did. And many times we are in the midst of these difficulties and we forget that Jesus is there to give us a hand. And it is a fact, we all know, studying Spiritism, that we are all created simple without any knowledge. And somehow we deviate from the good path and we end up right here full of baggage. Even though we have been offered repeatedly help, the mentors whisper in our ears, Jesus is always with us. We still sometimes do not listen because we are still under the yoke of our pride. We are under the work, the need of being right, so we don't listen. And all that creates a lot of difficulties. And many times when we are separated from our sense of self, when we are separated, not listening, quiet enough to listen to our mentors, to Jesus, to God, we are just focused on the material life. And many times the material life oppresses us because it's too much demanding and an illusional demands, because you can get a lot of, but you're never feeling in peace. So the important questions for us is, how can we let go this oppression that we feel when we are overwhelmed? And the question that's come is not how Christ can come to us, but how or when we are going to decide to be with Christ. Definitely. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, that I'm gentle and humble at heart. So, all the lessons that Jesus gave us are the work we are supposed to do, and that help us to feel light. But how many times we feel just like that? Many times we deviate in the path, we create this illusion that I'm not worthy, I must be perfect, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me. Every time we separate, we deviate from the path of the practice of love, charity as a duty, we end up here. And many times this was embraced for us when we are a little child. But it keep growing in our life. And get to a moment and you say, wait a minute, I need to check this out. When we started to learn Spiritism, when we start to learn Jesus' lesson, we're becoming more aware. Wait a minute, is that true? I'm not good enough? Do you think that's true? We are child of God. We are Jesus' brother and sister. Our worth is not at the table. No matter how much baggage we have, how much deviate we are from the path, because we do know the shadow does not exist, it's just an absence of light. So the moment we start to put in our light into our shadow, we are able to dissolve all that. And every time we experience one of those feelings is an information. The same way we put our hands in the burner, oops, hurts. It is the same thing. Every time one of these distorted thought or a belief that somehow was indoctrinated to us or we adopted in some way that we got confused, somehow that's an information that something is off track. So it is a reminder that we needed to align ourselves with Jesus' law and reminded to align ourselves with God. So it depends on in our communion with God. So every time this kind of pain showed up, is an information. I need to get closer to God because something is off track here. And it is important not to subject ourselves to pseudo-needs by the ego that being fictitious and transient, stun the sense, poison feelings, obliterated reasoning, to put obstacles to our spiritual improvement. So we need to become aware this pseudo-need of the ego that take us to that place. It is important in our meditation to know that this is the yoke that we don't want to do anymore. You have been doing that. When we are not choosing the yoke of Jesus, you can count we are choosing other kind of yoke that is taking us deviating from the path. So many times the feeling, I'm going to do it all by myself. I cannot make a mistake. I'll do it and it's going to be my way. There is room there for Jesus? Is there any room there for God? No, I'm 100% right there. So this is the yoke that helps us to create all this burden and baggage in our life. And that is a great obstacle to our spiritual improvement. Just becoming aware and meditating how much I got Jesus involved in my affairs give us a lot of information where we are putting our attention and which path we are following it. David, can you read that for us, please?
Moral delay makes the spirit a slave of inferior passions, where pride and selfishness establish a reign of desolation. However, free from their inferior appeals, making an option for the love of Christ, it is verified that its yoke liberates and protects because it is based on love.
Yeah. And we said it right from the beginning, how much the humbleness is going to be in our size for our moral progress, and how much the inferior passions, the selfishness and the pride that created that burden. So all that keep us from not to get aligned with the lessons of Jesus. So how many conflicts create in our life when we are under the yoke of the pride, of yoke of the vanity, the material possessions. How much conflict creates when we are under the yoke of the ego that separates us from others. Because when I think I'm not worth or nobody loves me, or I'm not good enough, that creates conflict. That's create a conflict in our relationships, because I'm going to be outside looking for someone to prove that I'm not worthy, that nobody loves me. It is the perfect law that attracts exactly. It's not by coincidence that someone showed up in your life to prove to you that nobody loves you. It's not a coincidence. It is that how much we harbor in our heart. So that creates a lot of conflict. And that's where Jesus brings his yoke for us to show us that it's about time that we learn to eliminate the idea that we have enemies. That idea that we have enemies in our mind, it is an illusion. Because in reality, we are all brothers and sisters. And he invites us for the good combat, the good fight. So when he said, come to me, he's invited us to the good fight. And for that, he gave us a great sword. He gave us the sword of forgiveness. So we are prepared to fight the good fight. That is to fight our vices, to fight those distorted thoughts that we have about ourselves, this illusion that we create when we are deviated in our path. And he also gives a shield of protection. And this shield of protection is the gratitude and the sparks of love. So the yoke of Jesus come along with a sword of forgiveness and a shield of gratitude. That's the true protection that we have. Because with that, we start eliminating from our minds the illusion that we have enemies, that someone else has the power to hurt us. We stop the illusion that someone else can punish us. We stop the illusion that someone else can make us feel wrong, unseen, and not good enough. It's freedom. And when we learn to connect with Jesus in that level, we are seen all the time. Because he's seen us. He's seen our effort. And when we connect with him at that level, he's watching us all the time. He is a witness of our effort and our commitment with our own regeneration. So we don't need to defend ourselves anymore from any enemy. They can say whatever they want. But it's my choice not to go there. Because we know we are the sum of ourselves. And Jesus, that is our buddy, our guide, our master, he's seen us. We don't need to be seen by each other anymore. When we feel seen by Jesus, when we feel seen by God, when we have a relationship with our Father, that is an immense source of love, we feel fed, we feel seen. So we can free our brothers and sisters of the obligation to see us, to compliment us all the time, to tell, oh, you're looking good. We free ourselves from that misery. Because that creates a lot of suffering. Because if I depend on Fatima to tell me I'm doing good, I'm good enough, what happens when she's not feeling good enough? Right? So when we learn to rely on Jesus, that is there. He knows our effort from morning to dawn. He knows. No matter how many times we fail miserably, He knows we're going to pick ourselves up and try again. And He's applauding our effort. And that's what it's all about. The shift of the weight in our back. Because we release the need for others to take that head out of our back. Because many times, I want you, Carol, to help me to feel better because I'm overloaded. But she might do it because she's a good friend, but maybe she won't. So it is an unknown. But when we rely on Jesus, there is no possibility to be different rather than the straight hand and the shoulder friend. That there is no way I cannot observe that vibration, tenderness that He offers. Come to me. It's a safe place to go. And when we do all that, we free ourselves from that game. It's her fault and his fault, not me. Why you did that to me? Because you did that, you did that. How much time we waste on that one? How much time? Because our eyes is out there, looking for approval, fear, rejection. When in reality, when we embrace in Jesus' lesson, He frees us from the yoke of this vanity, yoke of this pride, the yoke of the ego that want us to be the center of the world. How dare you didn't say that? How dare you don't agree with me on that one? I'm so much better, I know better what's the best first thing. How dare you don't agree with me? So it frees us from that. That creates a lot of misery. Because one day people are going to agree, but there are many days they're not going to agree with me. Because I'm not the center of the world. None of us are. We are all children of God. Each of us has our own divinity. So learning to embrace one another, respect one another, see each other as brothers and sisters. We are going to only do that when we eliminate the idea that we have enemies in our mind. And that's what Jesus says. Reconcile what is in the way. That's what it is. Reconcile. Because we don't know how much more time we're going to have one another. So make it this peace in your heart. Okay, Sandra.
A disciple sought a Christian teacher and asked him for an opinion about freedom. The noble friend, with a heart marked by the experiences of the world, thought for long moments and answered, "If you still do not know the teachings of the Christ, you are free to do what you like. But if you have already accepted the lessons of Jesus, you are free to do what you should."
And that's the line. And that's what it is, for us to have alignment. We need to do our duty. Because when Jesus said, "Come to me," He's inviting us to get out of prison. Because we know in this level, the planet, our planet can be a hospital, a prison, or a school. So when Jesus said, "Come to me," you that have burned, overload, come to me. He's inviting us to get out of prison. Because when we have enemies, when we have just conflicts, when we are under other yoke than Jesus, rather than Jesus, we are in the prison of old habits. He's inviting us to register in the school and learn the law, learning the charity. Charity is love in action. Is that right, Angela? Love in action. So when He does that, we are free to do whatever you want. So every time when you need to make a decision, you can do whatever you want. Because you know we are the sum of ourselves. You can do whatever you want. You are free. But if you know the laws, you're going to do what you need to do. Align with the law. And knowing that, we know the consequence. The peace of mind or the stress in the heart. So if you feel stressed, if you feel uneasy, if you feel a little conflict, if you have an idea that someone did something to you, just realize you are in the prison. And Jesus invited you, get out, the door is open. It's a choice. Register in the school. We have the form, by the way, anytime after that, to enter in the school. Angela, could you read that for us, please?
It is necessary that the human being prioritize his happiness orienting himself by the power of love. Thus, when Jesus says, "Come unto me, and I will give you relief," stress that the strength of the love is the only one capable of producing lasting peace and joy.
Okay. So Jesus went to the crown of the afflicted and discouraged, proclaimed the divine purpose to alleviate them. Come to me, a loving invitation. But not all the afflicted renounced the object of their despair, and not all that said want to flee in the shade to encounter the light. How many times we have listened the invitation, but we still don't go. We still are not accepting. How many times? How many times we're still in the suffering, even though we come here every week, and we still realize our heart is closed, and I'm still pointing fingers. How many times we are recusing, not accepting his invitation. So I invite everyone to really meditate, open your heart, and accept this love and invitation, and just becoming aware that if we cannot accept it yet, that means sometimes we're too attached to our suffering. We are still attached to our weapons, because we've been living in a reacting mode, because we didn't know Jesus. We didn't know the laws. We did the best we could. We took the yoke that served us the purpose right there. But this was there, this is now. We need to learn to put our arms down. We need to learn to detach to those defense mechanisms that will create so many incarnations to protect ourselves. We need to learn to put our arms down and detach so we can accept the love and invitation. Most discouraged people even try to satisfy their criminal caprices with the protection of Jesus, issuing strange prayers. However, when the sufferers sincerely address the Christ, they will bear him in silence of the inner sanctuary, inciting their spirit to despise comprehensive disputes from the battlefield, reserving to them the gospel's powerful light for the indispensable renewal. Many times we get so confused with our arms or our weapons that we ask Jesus' protection with that. We ask Jesus funny things because we are coming from accusing others, blaming others, rather than take responsibility. Help Jesus just to make it, help him to pay what he did to me. Some people pray like that, unconsciously, because the word says one thing, but what Carla said, what comes from the heart is what truly matters. That's why Jesus said, go back. Remember when the guy came into the church to say, I've done so much. Mm-hmm. Right? And the other said, I'm a sinner. Who's going to get the help first? So sometimes we say a prayer to Jesus, but in our heart we are harboring rebellions, accusing others, holding someone else responsible for my misery. And we ask Jesus protection this way. So the invitation is for us to realize, let the gospel, the powerful light, enter in your heart, in your mind, for the indispensable renewal. And that's the only way we're going to find rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So just when we learn to act according to the laws, asking Jesus to help us to let go our vices, helping Jesus to help us to put our weapon down and grab the sword of forgiveness, the shield of gratitude with the sparkles of love. that we are going to really own our divinity, make our spark of divinity shine. That's why Jesus said, let your light shine, because we are here with you. Let Jesus to empower your light so you can live a life that is rest, and we can relax because the yoke is easy and the burden is light. So that's the message. And the Spirit's book said, what's the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model is Jesus. Because walking along with Jesus, that's the only way that we are going to find the joy and the strength on earth. Our friends can help, our center can help, but just when we connect with Jesus, and Jesus